Mate, 40 here. So the news is overwhelmingly what bureaucracies report. Your weather forecast, right, it comes from government weather forecasting. Now, that government weather forecasting can be repackaged by private services, but it ultimately comes from a government bureaucracy. And so when the news media says that claims of migrants eating pets in Springfield, Ohio, has been debunked, they mean that according to bureaucracies in Springfield, Ohio, they have no credible reports of migrants eating pets. Now, why does the news rely so heavily on the reports of bureaucracies? Because they can't get sued if they simply report what's in a government document. Right? If the news just tells you, according to Springfield Police, according to Springfield City Manager, right, according to this news release from the city of Springfield, right, they can't get sued for that. And so the business model of the news overwhelmingly depends upon basing it on bureaucratic responses. And so the news media doesn't declare the shooting at Donald Trump an assassination attempt until a government bureaucracy has conducted an investigation and come to that conclusion. And there are many benefits and weaknesses from an epistemics perspective with this approach, but it's essential for the business of news. Right? You don't want to get sued. And you're not going to get sued if you simply report what's in a court filing, or if you simply report what's in government bureaucratic paperwork. And so the news media has gone above and beyond that, and the great news media go beyond bureaucratic reports. Right? They've tracked down the original Facebook post of a woman who said she heard third hand about somebody's cat being taken and eaten, and that's good journalism. So I think it's an important story whether or not what Donald Trump and J.D. Vance has said is true. Migrants eating the dogs, the cats, people's pets in Springfield. But I'm not sure you can really say the news has been debunked, that that's going on. Said you can perhaps more properly say there's no evidence that this is true. And reports from constituents don't count as evidence unless you have evidence backing up their reports. So J.D. Vance says he's heard from constituents that this is true. It doesn't mean that this is true. But then if you have photos, and Chris Rufo published a photo that looks like two cats being barbecued, but it's not clear. So you might have some evidence there. Now, the literal fact or falsity of these claims is important, but there are other things that are important too. That is, how has the arrival of 15,000 Haitian immigrants affected life for the residents of Springfield? And it's possible that the overwhelming majority of mainstream media reports are true, that Haitians have overwhelmingly been a blessing to Springfield. And so I'm curious, are they overwhelmingly earning their own way, or are they overwhelmingly on welfare? Because generally speaking, most immigrants, right, go on welfare. It's morning in America, bro. So I'm really enjoying Megyn Kelly's show. right? She went live for 2.5 hours after this latest Trump assassination attempt. She had great guests on. She had Rich Lowry, the editor of National Review. She had various experts in law enforcement, Secret Service. Right, she had Susan Crabtree, who's broken a lot of stories for, I believe, Real Clear Politics about Secret Service ineptitude. So then she followed up with another great show yesterday, right, understanding the latest Trump assassination attempt. Oh, thirsty boy. This live streaming is thirsty work, bro. And a lot of interesting points raised by Megyn Kelly, that this latest Trump assassination attempt, right, the would-be assassin has ties to Iran. So we know that Iran wants to assassinate Donald Trump. We have that report from a government bureaucracy. And Eric Trump wondered out loud on Megyn Kelly's show whether there's a mole inside the Secret Service who is feeding information to these would-be assassins. Right? Eric Trump raised that. It's not a ridiculous question. How did this would-be assassin know to hang out at this particular spot for 12 hours where he would have gotten a clear line of sight on Donald Trump? Now, right-wing media doesn't emphasize the following. Donald Trump has been urged to change up his golfing routine because protecting Trump on a golf course is quite difficult. And Donald Trump hasn't accommodated the Secret Service. So, yes, Donald Trump did do the equivalent of wearing a super short skirt, right? He played a role in making himself a more vulnerable target. Right, the Secret Service tried to argue him against doing these big outdoor rallies because they are more difficult to protect than an indoor facility. And Donald Trump didn't seem to do anything to bolster the Secret Service during his time in office. Now, apparently he brought in an outsider to run the agency, which might have been a good thing. And what usually happens in these situations with government bureaucracies, they get more funding, but they don't necessarily become more competent. So at the beginning of a book on the Secret Service by Carol Leonig, she quotes a guy whose lifelong dream was to work for the Secret Service, and he did work for the Secret Service for at least 2 decades, and then he was talking to a Navy SEAL, and he wanted to know the Navy SEAL's perspective on the Secret Service. And the Navy SEAL said, well, if anyone's serious about killing the president, you guys will pose very little obstacle. So perhaps there needs to be some widespread fundamental change with the way we operate the Secret Service, but it's not crazy to think that there is some kind of mole inside the Secret Service. Right? The Secret Service ineptitude has been so immense that it's not crazy to think that there's some kind of mole inside the Secret Service who is assisting these would-be assassins of Donald Trump. Okay, let's look at the chat. First one in, the debate and the Republicans. I think the GOP realized that they're most popular among their base with Facebook boomer memes. Debates are beyond the capacity of their supporters. Well, the average IQ in America is 97. So you want to be able to reach low information voters, low propensity voters. And for the first time in a century, low propensity voters are more likely to vote for Donald Trump than to vote for the Democrats. So yeah, the GOP definitely wants to appeal to low propensity voters, low information voters, people for whom this is not a top 5 or even a top 10 priority. in Donald Trump is excellent as the parole whisperer, right? He's excellent at speaking to people with a 90 and a 95 IQ. So the surface level news media reporting is about what bureaucracies are telling them, right? The deeper, more excellent journalism that we get access to comes from talking to individuals who challenge or supplement bureaucratic reports, because there's no inherent reason that what a bureaucracy states is true is really true. Now, is Democratic rhetoric leading to these Trump assassination attempts? I'm not sure. I don't think that Democrats should hold themselves back from saying Donald Trump is a threat to democracy because of these assassination attempts. But there does come a point where the wise person adjusts his rhetoric due to horrific behavior by those people who share that rhetoric. So this second attempted assassin against Donald Trump, he did post publicly that Donald Trump is a threat to democracy. He did echo these Democratic talking points. And so that is an argument. I'm not saying it's conclusive, I'm not saying it ends the discussion, but that is an argument for Democrats reducing the intensity of their attacks on Donald Trump. I'll give you a good example. When I was writing about the alt-right and talking about it on YouTube, right, this was primarily before the alt-right had killed anyone. So when Josh Hawley published, an academic political scientist, published his first book on the alt-right, you know that nobody in the alt-right had killed anyone. And the alt-right was quite different from white nationalism in that it was primarily based in humor, right? The white nationalists weren't primarily about humor. The alt-right was about culture jamming, right? The alt-right's public presentation was primarily we're a bunch of merry pranksters. And so because nobody in the alt-right was going out there and hurting anyone prior to Charlottesville, that made it much more socially acceptable to talk to people in the alt-right and to discuss the themes, the jokes, the arguments of the alt-right, because no one was getting hurt. Then, once people in the alt-right started slaughtering people, and that began with the mess at Charlottesville, and then accelerated to the widespread slaughter in mosques in New Zealand, and then to attacks at Walmart in South Texas. Right, as soon as people using alt-right, joking, prankster language and memes, taking on that 4chan alt-right, edgy language approach, right, that profoundly changed how I would talk about the alt-right and who I would have on my show, and it circumcised my discussion. It makes a difference when people who are using certain arguments, certain language, certain memes and jokes start slaughtering people, right? Even if the arguments are factually correct and even if the memes are funny, once people who use these arguments and memes to slaughter people, they cease to be so funny. And so I changed fairly dramatically in how I would talk about the alt-right once the alt-right started slaughtering people. And so if this talk and rhetoric that Donald Trump is a mortal threat to democracy and electing Donald Trump will be in the end, and it leads to more assassination attempts and to more violence, right? For the wise, thoughtful person, that does change how you talk. It certainly affected how I talk. The alt-right ceased to be funny when its advocates went out there and started slaughtering people. right? That makes a difference, right? If in the name of the Great Replacement, you have people going into shopping centers and supermarkets and mosques and slaughtering people, then the wise, thoughtful, pro-social, concerned citizen, right, is going to change his attitude with regard to those memes and those jokes. And so that will happen for thoughtful people who consider Donald Trump a threat to democracy if we have more of this horrific behavior by those who are echoing their language. Right? You can have language that's 100% factually accurate, 100% epistemically sound. You can have jokes that are 100% funny. Right? You can have devastating memes. But as soon as people get out there and start killing people and using these memes, these arguments, this type of language and rhetoric, right, for the wise person, they can't go down this road anymore. Right? We all live in a society. And up until Charlottesville, the alt-right, up until Hailgate, right? Up until Hailgate, the alt-right was regarded as a bunch of merry pranksters. And after Hailgate, the alt-right looked like cosplay. And it ceased any mainstream, above ground social acceptance after Richard Spencer's Hailgate. And then after Charlottesville, right, it just became widely viewed as the equivalent of the Nazis. And let's say that analysis is wrong, right? Let's say that widespread social opprobrium is misplaced, right? You're not going to win. And so you have to take into account majority opinion. And if the majority is overwhelmingly appalled by this type of rhetoric, then you have to be self-defeating, suicidal, have nothing to lose, have nothing to live for. Your life has to be an abject failure where you have no dreams, no ambitions, you're not trying to build anything with anyone. Right? You don't value your bonds and your connections to persist in using language and jokes and rhetoric that most people find appalling. And so I would expect at a certain point there's going to be more and more pushback against those who overstate Donald Trump's threat to democracy. Now, I think the media is right to question the validity of Donald Trump's and J.D. Vance's claims about immigrants eating pets. But there's the claim at face value, and then there's the deeper claim, right, about the disruption to Springfield as a whole, of which these memes are just a fanciful, attention-getting, playful way of calling attention to a serious problem that is not getting addressed in the news media. So we do need solid reporting from Springfield. Are these Haitian immigrants a blessing? Right? Is Springfield better off for their presence? Are they the hard workers that they're overwhelmingly portrayed as in the mainstream media? Or is something more difficult going on? Now, we have a large Haitian community in the United States, so it shouldn't be that difficult to judge the Haitian community as a whole. It is the Haitian American community as a whole a net benefit for America or a net drain? Right? Are they paying more in taxes than they are consuming in welfare? And I was listening to the Reason podcast with Matt Welch. I think it was about the 35-minute mark of the latest episode on the debate between Trump and Kamala Harris. And he said, it's just obviously true that every immigrant group has assimilated to American norms by the third generation. And he stated that with absolute assurance, that no person who was interested in the facts could even question his statement. Just self-evidently true that the same things that they're saying about Haitians now, they were saying about J.D. Vance's ancestors who came over from the old world 2 centuries ago. And that's obviously false. Right? African Americans have not assimilated to American norms. Right? They have far higher poverty rates, out of wedlock rates, STD rates, crime rates, welfare dependency rates, low education rates than your average American. And African Americans have been here since the 17th century. It's such an obviously stupid, unfactual, non-empirical, completely bogus, false claim. Also, Mexican Americans, right, 3rd generation, 4th generation, right, they are not overall, right, at American norms of educational attainment, wealth attainment, welfare dependency, contributions to the tax base versus welfare dependency, crime rates. Right? They're not the same. This is after 3-4 generations. And what we do find with various groups, people only assimilate in the most superficial ways. Right? Japanese Americans overwhelmingly have life results that are more similar to the life results of the Japanese in Japan. Swedish Americans, Scandinavian Americans have life results that are more similar to the life results of Scandinavians living in Scandinavia than your average American. African Americans have life results in many ways that are more similar to the life results of other people in their home nations in West Africa. People usually only assimilate in the most superficial of ways, right? They learn the language of their host nation, they learn to dress like members of their host nation, and they adapt to a culture that fits their level of IQ. So people with below average IQ, they adapt to low IQ American culture, right? Sports and low IQ movies and TV, right? That's low culture. And going to art museums and reading serious books, right? That's high culture. And it's high culture that's only available to people with an IQ above 110. So this big assimilation myth is really unclear thinking. People usually don't assimilate except in superficial ways. They overwhelmingly tend to have life results that are more applicable to the type of life results people are getting in their home nation. I don't think the average Trump supporter at this point thinks the cat thing is a meme. They're convinced that the Haitians are literally eating the pets of the people that live there. Probably true. Because people who are naturally predisposed to vote for Donald Trump are going to be on the right, and they are going to be predisposed to negative views of outsiders. That's a consistent through line with people on the right. Right? They tend to be much more skeptical and to harbor many more negative attitudes towards members of outgroups than people on the left are much more open to cooperation and socializing with members of outgroups than people on the right. And there are going to be some situations where cooperating with an outgroup is to your advantage, trading with them, socializing with them. Right? You learn from them, you are able to trade applicable skills and goods and services. Then there are other situations where the outgroup is a danger to you and you'd be much better off with a xenophobic police state. So it all depends on the situation. So are the Trump supporters who view the cat memes as literally true, that the Haitian immigrants are eating the dogs, eating the cats, eating the pets of the people who live there? Are they closer to a fundamental political truth about the wisdom of importing hundreds of thousands of Haitians and whether or not that's good for America? All right. Are they wiser about that fundamental political issue than those who understand that the memes are false? I suspect they are. So they're probably empirically wrong about any widespread problem with Haitian immigrants eating the pets. But they're probably right that America overall does not benefit from the importation of hundreds of thousands of Haitians. But this is an empirical matter which I'm happy to allow to be settled by those with the empirical evidence. Are Haitian immigrants overwhelmingly a blessing to the United States? Right? Just look at the statistics, look at their welfare dependency, look at their crime rates, their disease rates, look at their innovation and entrepreneurial rates. Right? Is it better than the average American or is it worse? The great danger of our era that all the people predisposed to xenophobia are concentrated in the lower IQ, lower agency group, leaving the higher capacity members of society without antibodies. I think people with higher IQs are better at dealing with the different. Right? If you have a higher IQ, you're much more likely to be able to navigate a multicultural society and to reap the benefits and to minimize the downsides. But there are still a significant number of high IQ people who see the dangers with the reduction in social trust and social cohesion. But it does seem that the evidence points towards people with a higher IQ perhaps being more predisposed to politics of the left and to being much more open to the benefits of multiculturalism.